recording.
Oh, all right, we'll get it away from me. Hi, glad y'all can make it. We're part of the permanent building committee. The purpose of this meeting really is to present where we're at, get public feedback. That's why we don't need a quorum tonight. This is Marie Letarte, our director of our library. She will introduce our architect and owner's project manager. They'll go through the presentation. We'll open it up for questions. If it stays nice and orderly, we won't interject and ask questions go through us. I'll have an open forum, but if it seems to be getting chaotic, we'll try to facilitate an orderly meeting somehow. I should introduce us. I'm Chris Magliozzi, Brian Delory. Everyone knows Mike Ward. So with that, Marie Letarte.
Hi, thank you so much for taking the time and the effort on this ice cold day. At least it's not cold in here too much. I will introduce Phil O'Brien is principal at Johnson Roberts. He's the architect, and Dan Vlada is part of P3, the OPM. And I just want to say, Phil's going to, there's an organization there. Dan's going to do an intro about the Massachusetts Public Library Construction Program after some water, maybe. And then Phil's going to show off where we are, and then there's going to be time for questions. I was going to request, because it is being recorded for posterity, if you come up here when you have questions, it will be recorded. If people can't hear, I can repeat the questions, but they should be able to hear Dan and Phil here. So, you're on.
So as long as I don't die before I
Exactly.
get going. So, Clinton and I are just going to briefly go through the process. Clinton was invited by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, also known as the MDLC, into the planning grant process. And the planning grant process requires that we go through a level of design that you're going to see today. The design gives the team the ability to adequately project what the cost of the project would be. And that projection of the cost, which is done by an independent estimator, will determine the grant amount that Clinton will receive. So the Clinton will receive what's called a provisional grant, and I'll get into that in just a second. So when Phil goes through the design here, once we've polished and taken in some of your comments and tweak what we have, that's not the end. That's not what you're going to see tonight is enough for us to get to that estimate representation. We will be developing the design forward should the town move forward at the town meeting, at the annual town meeting, and fund the project. We will then move forward with the actual final design and the final construction documents for bidding. But there are a whole bunch of steps that occur, and I'd like you to just understand the process. So the first part of that process is that a grant application has to go to the MDLC, and that's what the building committee's been working on for the past 6 or 8 months. The library commissioners have been working on it for the past 2 years, and that is due on the 31st of December. So we're hoping, silence. So we're hoping that Phil's going to get it done before the 2 holidays, so that we don't all have to work between the 2 holidays, so we can submit early. But we have till the 31st for us to submit the entire package electronically to the library director, who uploads it to the state portal. Around the 15th of January, independent reviewers, a designer, a library director, and a state-appointed official will review our package and make sure that we've committed to all of the requirements of the MDLC process. And if they didn't like something, they'll give us a little review comment here and there. Usually the comments are minor, as each design iteration that we've done in the past months has been reviewed by the MDLC as we've been going forward. So those review comments are due on or around the 15th of January. Once we get those review comments back, we will send the entire package with the review comments responded to our estimator. And our estimator is independent of the designer and independent of the OPM, and they'll come back with what the cost of the project will be, soup to nuts. We will then submit that entire package to the MBLC, which includes all the costs: furniture, technology, design, management, any geotechnical work, and of course the cost of the building itself. And that will allow us to enable the grant calculator to be calculated. So we'll know sometime towards the end of February what our approximate grant will be. On the 5th of March, they're actually going to vote your grant. So the Board of Library Commissioners have a meeting scheduled for the 5th of March, and if all goes well, we're on the docket to have a grant sent to the town of Clinton. And the final piece to that grant application is obviously funding the project. So if you don't fund the project, the next projects on the list, which is Hudson and Whitingsville, Northbridge, those libraries then move up to the list, and they have their opportunity to grab the money that was already set aside for Clinton. So that's the process of the MDLC, and I just wanted you all to know that. And what you see tonight, if you don't like something, don't be afraid to talk about it. If you love it, don't be afraid to talk about it. It helps us with the design. What you see tonight is not what's going to be built. It's going to get moved and tweaked and pulled and tucked after the project's funded and we go through the process. And we have to go through the same process as anybody else in town. We have to go to the planning board for our permits and any other board that the project needs. We have to do that too. So we don't get any special treatment because we're a municipality. All of those are public hearings that you have an opportunity to have a say there, just like you would if they wanted to build a Starbucks in your neighborhood. So all of those things will happen as we move forward after funding. So with that, I'm going to introduce the architect, Phil Johnson, who has designed, Phil O'Brien from Johnson Roberts, who has designed how many, 32?
We built 35.
35. That was off by 3. So, off we go.
Designed more than that. Well, thanks so much for having me again. Phil O'Brien at Johnson Roberts. Johnson Roberts, I'm not either one of those, and I'm not married to either one of those. But I have been with Johnson Roberts almost since we started. Just a couple months after Stu Roberts started the firm, I joined him. It's been almost 30 years now for me that I've been with Johnson Roberts. Johnson Roberts is pretty well known for designing libraries, designed lots and lots of libraries. Prior to Johnson Roberts, Stu Roberts and I, as well as my other partner, Jeff Davis, we all worked at Tappe Associates, and I was there for 7 years. Stu was there for 9, and Jeff was there for 15. He was their president before he left there. We've all designed libraries, and we're there as well. So I've been designing libraries mostly in Massachusetts, and lots of them with the Board of Library Commissioners for pretty much my whole career. So I feel like we know libraries pretty well, but you know Clinton. We want to build a library, we want to design a library for you folks. And even though I think we understand how libraries work, we want to know what's best for you all, and that's why we're here. Really enjoy the process. Yeah, public work is almost all we do. Don't do a lot of private work. So working with communities and working with building committees, that's really what we're set up to do. We enjoy the process, or we wouldn't do it. Building public buildings that you can go back to and visit, like children that you don't get to see very often, is actually very rewarding for us. So I'm going to jump into this. As Dan mentioned, we're in the early part of the overall process. If this project were to get funded and go all the way through construction, we are in the kind of beginning parts of a long process. We're in the schematic design process. So this is kind of thing where things are really pretty squishy and things can move around. And what the Board of Library Commissioners wants is about 75% of that early schematic design process, which means after you get your grant and after we do that estimate in January and then into February and March. We're still not done with schematic design. After schematic design is design development, where we get to figure out what all the details are going to be, what kind of mechanical system you have, just exactly what kind of lighting we'll have, what kind of toilet fixtures will go in your bathrooms. So if you ask me that, I can kind of guess where I think we're headed with those things, but I don't really know the answers to those things yet. Those are a little further down the road. So the point I'm making is that there's still plenty of opportunity for design input, and we like to work with the community all the way through. That being said, we're getting close to that 75% schematic design, and so we have a pretty good idea of what the building's going to look like. We've been working on the plan and the site for a little bit longer. We've pretty much established rudimentarily the plan, and we've established the site. We're starting to look at what the building might look like. That's still in flux. The most recent things you'll see at the end of my slideshow are what the building's going to look like. But this is how it lays out. I'm going to talk a little bit about site analysis. We'll look at the site plan. We're going to look at the most up-to-date floor plans, and then, as I promised, those model views are at the end. Can everybody hear me okay? I've heard that I start out strong, but then I tend to taper as my voice wears out. If you're having trouble hearing me, give me the high sign, and I'll speak up a little bit. So, site analysis. I'm going to move through this stuff pretty quick. Here's where we are at your town hall. This Central Park, the existing library is there. The site has been selected as 239 Chestnut Street. It's right on Chestnut Street. There's a building right on the corner that I think is owned by Verizon. It's a brick building on the corner. I've got a picture that standing right there on Central Park, looking in this direction that I'll show you in a moment. There's your senior center. So pretty centrally located to downtown. The site is about 1 1/3 acres. We've had a survey done. There's a little bit of grade for those of you that are familiar with the site. There used to be a building on the front part of the site. You can see cars parked along there. Not quite sure who it is that parks on there. But there's a low wall along the side, and then there's a driveway pretty much on either side of the building. There's a little bit of an open spot in the wooded area here, and there's some other things up there. Vehicles, I'm not quite sure who owns them or whatever, but they look like they've been sitting there for a while. So a little bit of woods, a little grove here, and then woodsy around the back. There's about 20 feet of rise in the grade from the front of the site to the rear. So it slopes up pretty gently. Pretty much follows, if you're familiar with the street between the Verizon building and the senior center, that kind of gradual slope going up the hill. It's a natural that pretty much goes right across this part of the neighborhood. That's kind of what we're dealing with. North is pretty much up. It's a little bit more like that. So the sun comes around this way. So we'll have nice sun coming in here onto the building, shining on the building. So the potential for photovoltaics, solar panels on the roof on this side, kind of facing this way, is one of the things that we're thinking about, at least having the ability to be able to do that. And then getting folks into the site and getting parking there and building a building with that slope is one of the tricks that we're dealing with. Okay? There's that picture that I said from Central Park, looking up. The site is right there. There's that Verizon building. Right over my right shoulder right there is the senior center. And so that's the site. You can see there's a couple cars parked in there right now. There's that low wall that runs along by the sidewalk. So when you're looking up from Central Park, our building is going to be right there. So pretty closely connected to downtown. Downtown is kind of a mixed bag in terms of the buildings. There's a variety of buildings types that happen downtown. You've got the library, the existing building across the way. This building here, they're kind of different. Another brick building on the other side of the library used as the Historical Society, I believe. Some other local buildings, kind of looking up the street, past the library to the common on the right. This is between the library and the town hall. Is when you're on Chestnut Street at the new site, you look right across the street, those are the houses that you can see. So interesting kind of mixture on the site. So this is our site plan, most current. We're looking at a two-story building here, and I'm going to take you through that a little bit further. It's a little different because this section of the building right here is actually one story, and the majority of the building is two-story. This section right here is at the mid-level between those two stories. We're calling it a split level, like a ranch from the 70s. So this is down a little bit lower, and part of the reason is because we're dealing with the slope coming up the hill. If we try to climb all the way up to the second floor here, it gets really steep. And if we try to flatten out the site, we'll end up with 20-foot retaining walls around the back. So we're trying to find that balance in there and make your building easy to use. So we're looking at parking along a driveway that comes up pretty close to where the driveway is now. You just barely see it, there's a driveway there, so we'd expand that, pretty much connect where that other driveway is, close that other driveway down. A little connection so that if you're walking up from the square, you could get out onto the site without having to come all the way down to the driveway. Entrance in the front, a little entry plaza and a canopy right up at the front door. And then if you drive up around the back, you can come in the rear. Most of the parking is at the back of the building, main entrance really here. This section of the building where you see these kind of blue-purple spaces, that's our nighttime zone. So we can walk down the rest of the building, and if you're coming to a meeting at night, you can get in and use these spaces, use the bathrooms and so forth, and I'll walk you through that on the plans a little bit more. But that zone is kind of to serve after hours. Kind of two levels of parking here. And then another plaza that kind of can serve the children on the upper floor, so they could flow out and use the space here. We looked at children's down. Folks were a little concerned about kids coming out, being so close to the road, and so kids are up and they could use this space at the back. We've got a little protection around around that plaza area with some low walls is what we're looking at. Maybe a seating wall and some planters. So floor plans. I'm going to start down. So we've got an entrance that goes out to the street. Chestnut is down there. Entrance that comes in from the road right there. Walk right down this spine in the plan. That spot right there lines up with the stairs, lines up with the entrance at the rear, lines up with the entrance in the front. We've got a circulation desk in there. If you come in from the rear door, come down a half a flight of stairs and you're on this level. Or if you come in from the front, circulation desk is right there. Everything over here is low so you can see. Book stacks for the fiction and nonfiction collection. We've got some quiet study and conference rooms here. There's a book drop in case you need to return some materials after the library is closed. Computers in the center of the plan, along with a computer study room, copier, things like that happen close to the desks, so you could get some help if you need it. The new books area, audio-visual collections, some places to read close to the front. You want to kind of stay away from the quieter portions of the library. Director's office, local history and conference room here in the green. Friends storage room and book sale room is right here, close to the door if you need to get in there, and then some electrical and mechanical spaces. And then that right there is basically the under portion of the split level upstairs.
Where's the elevator?
Elevator, right here next to the stairs.
Okay.
So if you come in from the back,
Straight in.
straight in, half a flight up, half a flight down, you'll be able to look right up or right down the stairs and see the desk from either way when you look in there. Or you can get in the elevator, go up half a level or down a half a level. And that will put you in this case, right at this upper lobby. You can get directly into children's, you can get directly into teens. There's also access to the staff break room, a couple of public toilets here. So this is down at half a level, straight in from the driveway at the back, okay? No steps, no stairs, no ramps, straight in on all the doors. So if you come in here after hours, the stairs would be closed off, the elevator would be locked, you'd have access to a large meeting room. There's a little kitchenette associated with that as well. You can get into the kitchen from either the meeting room or from outside, so if there's a function going on and you want to come in and you're getting some coffee and snacks ready for an intermission. There's no intermission with coffee and snacks, is there?
That's a limited snack shack.
Not tonight, no kitchenette. But so you could get into this kitchenette and take care of business kind of while the meeting is going on. There's a storage room associated with the meeting room, so it's large enough to do all your stacking chairs and tables and then some additional space in there. You also have access to the makerspace in the evening. So both of these spaces obviously are are always open when the library is open as well. Easy access from both the adults department up a half a level or the children's down a half a level to get to these spaces as well. So these support spaces are available. If you planned a children's program right here and it got too large and no one was using the meeting room, you're able to take those kids right down into this room without having to go through the adults department. Right? We're just trying to think about how you might use the building. Secondary book drop up here as well. So if you park out the back and you say, oh, you don't have to walk around the building. Teens room, they have their own space here. There's a glass wall where you can, the children's service desk can kind of keep an eye on them. There's also a service desk in here. If you have a volunteer and they wanted to hang out there in the children's, in the teens department, there's a spot for them there. If you had some help, you could certainly do that there. In the children's department, which you see is in yellow, there's the service desk when you come in. The kind of new collections here, AV materials, new books right in here. Tweens, a spot for those kind of kids that are getting a little bit older, haven't quite made it to the teens department. They're close to the teens department, so they can see the cool things that are going on there in case they want to jump in, and there's a door there in case these folks need to get in there pretty quick without having to go around. Right behind the desk is a workroom, storage room, children's program room, and some storage that goes along with it. There's a couple of public toilets up here that are good for the teens, overflow from the lobby, but there's also a toilet, family toilet, in the children's department. So if you got a couple of young kids and you're hanging out with them here, you can keep an eye on them and they don't have to leave the department. Age groups are youngest kids, preschool, school-age kids, tweens, teens. Trying to keep a rhythm into the space. All right? Guys are quiet. If you want me to go back to any one of these slides, just let me know. I know it's overwhelming. Model views. Maybe this is why you all came. So one of the things that we're looking at are different materials. So we're looking at a building that's got a couple of different materials on it. We're looking at cement panels. These are basically an imitation stone. They have zero maintenance. They pretty much last forever. They're thin. They're lightweight. They come in kind of stone colors. Here's a limestone pattern, kind of has a little bit of variation. This one has a little bit less variation in kind of a gray. There's very little variation in this kind of buff stone. There's a bunch of different colors that they come in, but we've used these on a variety of different projects. We're also looking at brick, because you get a lot of brick buildings in town, including this building's brick, kind of beige brick. Your existing library and a lot of other red brick buildings in town, so we're looking at a red brick. One of the other options we're looking at as well is glass reinforced concrete. This is kind of like a cast stone product, but it's moldable, and so it's a little bit more flexible, the kinds of things that we could do with it, make it look a little bit more like stone, but it's still lightweight, pretty easy to use. So those are some of the materials that we're looking at. And here's a view of what it might look like if you kind of, here's the Verizon building there. So if you've gone up a little bit past the building and you're looking back at it, entrance at the lower level, there's the upper level there. It's the reading spaces in the children's and in the adults departments right down there. So this is that spine. That spine runs right along to the rear entrance. That sloping roof there faces south. Great opportunity for solar panels up on the roof. And this clerestory window right here also brings in blue northern light, no glare, lights up the center of the building, keeps the lighting costs down, and also lights up that kind of spine. That window right there lines up front door to back door. Lets people organize as they make their way up to the building. You can kind of see where you need to go. Trying to help people to understand how they move around inside the building. And then in the back there, we've got the maker space, and you can see that's that section that's kind of at the mid-level. So the floor comes in here, and then that's down half a level at the back. So there it is from the back. You come around there, main entrance, book drop. The maker space is right in there. Those windows are in the maker space. That door right there is for an exterior storage, snow shovels, sand. Your book bike goes in there where they can get access and go out. Offices on the upper and lower plan, storage rooms, children's program room is up there. Here's the other end of that spine that goes from front to back in the building, and then that's the meeting room on the end with an emergency exit. Here it is kind of pulled around to the south side of the building. The south side of the building has an accessible route that goes up along the back, kind of, we're envisioning that as kind of more of a garden path, it's a little bit more curvy. You can make your way up to the patio at the rear from here. There'll be a connection to the sidewalk right at this point, so if you're walking up from Central Park, you can get right up in here and go up around the back, or you could certainly just go up and go in the front door, without having to go all the way up to the driveway to get in. This little overhang here that sticks out from the children's department on the upper floor, so you can kind of get right out there and get a good view. Again, taking advantage of that southern light, we have some overhangs here that are going to help block the and shade these windows when the high sun in the summertime, and then that low sun will penetrate deep into the building in the winter when you're looking for it. That's the end of the meeting room, and the storage space is out there in the back. You talked about a potential for having a, what's it called, a story walk?
Story one.
Up along this walkway here in this little kind of garden area. And then there's that view from Central Park, standing on the corner looking past the Verizon building. And that's kind of what you might see looking in from Central Park, trying to be a downtown player. That's my show. Absolute silence.
Go
So
back.
we'll just, for your record, just state your name. We'll get to everybody so you don't have to talk over each other. We'll stay as long as you need to.
And I'm happy to flip back to any slide that you want to see again.
I just want to get, can you go back one slide?
One slide.
So it's an acre and some of land.
About an acre and a third, yep.
Is at the back of the building, there's the parking. Is there any land in back of the parking? Anything left?
We're taking up a lot of the site.
Could you say that again, please?
The question is how much more of the site is available beyond the building and the parking. So there's a green space in here, there's a slope to it, there's a green space between the upper and lower parking lots. We're only about 10 feet or so away from the property line around the rest of it. So we've got green space along the side of the building here in this path. Then we've got outdoor spaces in these patios on the front.
Okay, so
In the back.
I mean, I'm looking long-term, there wouldn't be any extra room to expand. If you had to, you'd have to take part of the parking lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
you could certainly expand, but you're going to be in your parking lot.
Yeah,
That's right.
Okay. And then can I talk about, just point out the book drops again.
So at the back of the building, there's a book drop right next to the door. And in the front of the building, the door is here, and there's a book drop right next to the door.
So,
They're both under the cover of a canopy.
but both of them are very far from the circ desk. So,
Yes, more convenient for the patrons than the staff.
than the
but
staff.
Yes.
Yeah, but there's not too much you could do about that except move the circ desk closer, but I guess you can't.
Given that we're connecting front to back, we're looking at desks that can kind of keep an eye on both.
Yeah, 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 I think you're kind of stuck with that. I like the design, love the layout. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah,
Did you say if there would be bike racks there?
I didn't say that, but yes, I haven't done a library in recent memory that didn't have bike racks. Yeah.
Maybe if you put them, they will come.
Yeah, we certainly will.
They actually get used a lot more than you think.
If we don't put them there, the kids will just pile their bikes on the ground, leave them there.
Thinking of the adults.
Yes, and they'll lock them to something. But yeah, we'll probably have them in the front, is my guess. They'll be in here somewhere. But once we get to that point, that's a design development thing. And our landscape architect will probably make a recommendation about where they go. I can tell you where I think they're gonna be, and they'll say, that's dumb, they should go over here. And I'll be wrong, but that's why we hire them, because they're professionals. Yeah.
I'd like to know, the main structure of the library is slanted, and you spoke about solar panels. Are there, and then there were areas that were kind of flat. Will those be accessible and usable in any way? roof areas?
You mean, could you get out on the roof and sit out there or something?
Yes.
No, we don't have anything like that in the plan. There's really no way to get up there. There's really no way to get up there and make it safe for people. I mean, we could certainly do it, but, I mean, it would cost a lot of money. And then I'm not quite sure how you keep an eye on things up there.
You'd also be looking into the second floor windows of all the neighbors' houses.
Yeah,
The solar panels, will that feed into the grid, or do you have a storage system on site?
I haven't done a storage system for these types before. This is something that we're talking about, just so that we're clear. Where there's an opportunity for them on the roof, whether or not you can afford them, we'll probably price them to see what we can do. The building will definitely be solar ready, because that's a code requirement now, so you'll be able to add the panels, even if we don't put them on. But it probably will be, that you would own the panels rather than lease them, and it probably will be grid connected, is what we have normally done.
The building the use of electricity in the building will exceed the amount of electricity generated by the panels.
Yes.
So the need for the storage won't exist.
Yeah, we're looking at an all-electric, no fossil fuel building. I mean, that's the way the building code's going anyway.
To acquire
We're looking at an all-electric building, is what we're looking at. That's what we'll be including, is an all-electric, no fossil fuel building. And so, thinking about solar panels to help offset your electricity costs is a good idea, but of course, it's got the upfront costs that you have to consider. So it'll be one of those things that we'll talk about with the building committee once we get to the cost estimating stage. Yeah?
Just some very general observations. These are still the schematic level. Looking at the first floor plan in the adult section, one thing I noticed is that you have the independent study areas in the southwest corner of the site, which is your best opportunity from that level to take advantage of the view into the park. You may want to be glazed. It has the best opportunity for daylight throughout the day to come into that area. You might want to think about relocating to the plan. I suggest you might want to move to the north side. The other side of your circle is fine. Not only is that the north side, that's also the least attractive view. If there's any kind of view we needed to buffer in this property, it would be to the north. Another thing to think about in terms of that spine, I appreciate that spine. It's really good organizing principle. You might want to think, this is just an idea, the staircase going to the second floor to the children's area. I don't know if one wants to switch from kind of the northwest corner to somewhere in the middle, not the other one, going from the front from Chestnut Street. If it wants to move inboard so that you're not coming up at the edge of the young children's area, coming up like in the middle of the plan, in the middle of the tweens and the kids, slide it down from there to there. Is that where you're coming into the middle of the plan? It might be a little better with the little kids. And just as a suggestion, I appreciate that you acknowledge the relationship to the park, which might be, is a visual relationship, also a notional relationship. I don't know if there's more that can be done in your big model to kind of make the building more prominent from the park. I don't know if the glazed area wants to move. If you look at your south elevation too, if you look at your south elevation, you've got that cantilever bay. I don't know if that wants down, if the glazing wants to be on that southwest corner. So when you look up from the park, it's obviously an institutional building. And obviously, and there's a stronger visual connection of people inside the library to the park and to the civic space. Just in general, I think, especially on your overly view, I think it could be stronger from the park. I appreciate how you got that spine on the north side. It's really difficult to do with circulation. Normally, front door is like the most important element on elevation, but it makes a lot of sense on the north side. But there's something else to be done to make the building stronger when it's viewed from public space. That would be a recommendation.
Thank you.
Go back to his suggestion about moving the staircase.
You want to see that plan?
So if you move the staircase from there to the children's workroom, is that what you're suggesting?
I think he's suggesting you can't come here.
Someplace over there. So if you have that staircase over there, it's easier for the children's staff to get up and down, right? Because the children's staff could then go to right down to the circ desk, and the main circ desk.
They could
Well, they're close.
do this rather
Yeah.
than doing this.
Yeah, which would make the staff a little bit more united. So that seems like a good suggestion.
I think the reason why the stairs are like that is because of the conversation we've been having about whether or not you can go upstairs. Like from that stairs, if it's strictly, it's more of a children going in the other way and this being more of an emergency exit from the second floor. It's hasn't been determined yet, but keeping it by the door. And I think that is why we wanted it there, because that's where the door is.
We need to have some minimum separation between the exit points. There's a code requirement, they need to be far enough apart so that there's a conflagration someplace. Fancy way of saying fire. You can, it's gonna be almost fireproof. That's the way the code is, but we still have to design that way. You have kind of two different directions you can go. You can't have them all close to each other. But we might still be able to move it and accommodate something like that. But one of the ideas is that if you came in this door and you wanted to go up to children's, that's a policy decision whether or not the library wants to allow it. But if you have a lot of people that want to do that, it would mean that they could come in and do that and get right up without having to come in
To the
halfway into the library, with the kids and everything. I would think that most folks are gonna come out the back and walk in the main entrance.
And these are great examples of what gets flushed out at the second portion of schematic design and design development. All of these little nuances get flushed out by the building committee and the reviewers of the grant.
And would there be an opportunity for comment like this during the process?
Oh, yeah. I'm all for it.
Okay.
I mean, unless you, right?
Absolutely.
I said yes before I asked, but.
We're lucky they said yes.
I didn't follow everything that guy said. He's kind of talking a little low at times, but I liked the things he said. But I did want to second what he said about the group study rooms. I didn't really notice that they had been put there. I think that's going to be prime space. People are going to want to look out of those windows. Maybe somebody's picking them up in front of the building, they're going to want to watch what's going on out there. And, yeah, I think someplace else.
Put those-
I know that if I was studying there, I'd be looking out the windows.
Just so everyone knows, that was Phil Duffy, our Director of Community and Economic Development, that was giving feedback, so. If you don't know, he's one of your civic leaders.
Yeah, it sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
I like it.
Yeah. If you didn't pick that up.
He's a ringer.
She's cheating.
The other reason for putting it on the other end, closer to the evening, the open space during the evening, taking the study
Oh, the study
areas. Think in terms of Irving, that the study areas are open during the evening.
Oh, yeah, that's gonna be hard to accomplish here.
So,
Irving would fit in children's.
I know,
You heard it?
a
Yes.
mini project.
Can I just ask, Mr. Chairman, if they believe we're going in the right direction? Yeah. You guys like the direction that the project's going in?
I wouldn't have thought to ask that.
She's got a no comment, so
No,
let's ask her.
I like the old library.
Me too.
So I'm not for the building. I wish that it had stayed. And the space that you're using for the new library, to me, would be a great parking area for the entire town. So personally, no, I don't like what you're doing. I wish you had worked with the building that's there.
Yeah, it was part of our study, we did take a look at that.
And why was it decided not to continue with that?
Well, we need to fit the same amount of program space there, and basically the programmatic space more than doubles that building pretty much fills the whole site. Can't get any parking in there, and then there's no room for anything else on that site. I think maybe one of the bigger factors was that when we ran it, it actually looks like it's going to be more expensive to do that than to do rebuilding because of the complications of your existing building. Get those beautiful Guastavino vaults and everything in there. It just makes it really difficult. Structurally, there's some issues in there. There's a wing of self-supporting stacks in there with the glass floors that the library doesn't use anymore. Those will all have to come out. That all needs to be structurally reinforced. There's a fair amount that has to happen in that building before we could even begin to renovate it. And so when you put that cost along with the additional cost of renovation and the fact that there's no room to put anything on site, we'd have to close the street down and do it or something, it becomes more expensive.
It's a tough site.
It is a tough site, but it's a great historical
It is a
building.
beautiful building.
So what's going to happen to that historical building? Is it just going to sit and rot? And if you give it to somebody else, they're going to have to come up with the money to do whatever they want with it? It doesn't make sense.
Well, I'll respond to that, time choice. So, as you know, the Cochran House is right across the street from Bigelow Library. That was an elementary grade school, as I understand it. Then you go further and you have an icon museum that was all sorts of things. And then you go a little further, almost parallel to Cochran House, that was a post office. Now it's Briley Systems. So there's a lot of opportunity for the our civic servants in this town to look at this old building and perhaps do one of two things. Either renovate it for offices of some sort, or sell it to another entity, like I just mentioned, the 3 buildings, and I'm sure there's more buildings in Clinton. So it would not be destroyed. That's a historic building.
And so if somebody else is going to come in and renovate it, why can't we renovate it for the library? It's a great
Yeah,
space.
well, I might talk about it, but that ship kind of sailed. We had a number of hearings, we had a number of options, we had a number of opinions. And at the end of the day, the majority opinion was that the best move in a long-term interest here was to situate a new building on this site. You're absolutely right that we need to figure out a good plan with this building because it's a beautiful building. I think there was a lot of nostalgia for the library and the architecture, but it really didn't fit or make fiscal sense to develop this site to meet a modern-day requirement for a library. In the end of the day, even this, we're going to have to go to town hall and town meeting and present a case that's fiscally sound for the taxpayers, and they're going to have to say yay or nay. So I suspect that, our feeling was, one is it would be a much bigger lift, and the library needs a renovation expansion. We need a better library, we need a modern library. So, and that was decided last town meeting. The town voted that we need a bigger library to do a feasibility study. So this is where we're in the middle of it, and certainly choosing a site was really important, and there was a number of public hearings, a lot of opinions were weighed, and we all had somewhat different opinions. We voted, and this is where we are. So I don't know that it's particularly productive to try to reopen that argument because it's actually a moot point at this point. Whether this passes and moves forward is a different question, but redeveloping this site, at least at this time, just isn't there. And I certainly noted that you don't agree with that decision, but the decision is in fact made.
I would just like to say that I appreciate her concern about the building, because that's exactly how I felt when I moved to Clinton, walked in the building, and I thought, oh my God, this is my mom's library. She grew up in Ludlow, which is also in Middletown, and I'm sure the library there was the same vintage. But when she was there, it was closer to new, and I went to an open house at the library, walked around, and when I heard what issues the building is facing, I can understand the decision, and I support it. And I say that because I live here from Cambridge, where the main library actually got the best of both worlds. They won a grant to expand, and so we have the old library next to a new library. And they actually meld together and it works. And I will say the seating there is facing the grassy area. But I'm grateful that the expansion happened, and I see a lot more people using it, and I don't see crowds in the new library, but I can well imagine that there are kids that have their favorite spot there. And I really hope that the new library is approved in the town meeting, and I will show up, and I hope that people can imagine more people using it and getting the resources, which, come on, they're all free. I hope that people, that the town comes up with a way to say this would be, if it passes, this would be the dollar amount for different people's taxes, and think about it as a subscription. Like, how much do you pay for internet? How much do you pay for TV? You pay this tax for a limited number of years, right? It's not going to be forever. And then you have access to everything in the library free. So I hope that we can think of it that way. I'm a renter, so I have a certain amount of not so much skin in the game, but I'm renting for family, and if their taxes go up, I'm going to contribute to that, because I want a library that's used by a lot of people and appreciated and accessible, which is really the issue with the current libraries, I understand it. There's some people that just physically can't get in. I'm done.
I will say we tried really hard to do what you just described. I mean, they did a bunch of schematic plans about putting an addition next to this library, taking up back land, making it 3 levels. There just wasn't enough land to accomplish it with any sort of success or economy of scale. We really, our first gut inclination was, in fact, to put an addition and renovate this because of that, but it just didn't seem to work, so. Any other questions, comments?
I have 2. The first is, I'm sure will be taken care of by landscape architect. If you look at the exterior, the large-scale plot map.
The plan?
Yes.
Site plan, right?
That, my concern would be having pedestrian access through that green space in the parking lot.
Here.
So that people are not walking
Around.
around.
Yeah.
The other bit for me is, I know that technically this is compliant, this is accessibility compliant. I don't love the mini stairs that lead from one level down as you're coming back. It is a hassle for people with mobility issues, regardless of whether it is technically compliant, whether it is walking mobility issues, or whether they're in a wheelchair or have a walker. I feel like a ramp there or somewhere to change levels is far friendlier to accessibility needs.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we've got 2 handicap spaces, accessible spaces here, 1 accessible space here in the front. I think that people coming in this way at the lower floor.
Sure, but it's still, it limits accessibility to both areas of the building by one person, regardless of which door you enter, and that's
Understood, yeah. All on 1 floor would be. You got a couple acre sites someplace we can?
I'm not suggesting all on 1 floor, I'm suggesting that to go up a half step, maybe not stairs.
Understood.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I've already said this before, but I just want to repeat it in this meeting that I like this plan very much. I think the building looks approachable. I like how it looks from the park, which I think is really important. There are these 2 community spaces, 1 outdoor, 1 indoor. I see this kind of connection between those 2, and I like the way it's laid out on the site. I do agree about the issue with the stairs. I think I picture people coming in with little children, and they've got books in their arms and a, stroller, a bag, and, they could go in the elevator, but, maneuvering stairs is going to be tricky. But I understand why you did it. If there's any way to put some sort of, I don't know, it's a crazy idea, but some sort of rampish kind of a thing that would be available to people in case they can't use the elevator or whatever, that would be nice. But I get why you did what you did, and I think that it would be a very successful library for this community. I think it would be fantastic.
If we go back and just to revisit what the lady just said, is there any possibility of a ramp also being included in this somewhere for access for handicap?
Well, we've got the elevator, and I understand that getting in an elevator is more complicated than just taking a ramp. The ramp is static, and you don't need to wait for it and so forth. The distance that we're talking about would require a ramp that was, say in rough terms, is maybe the length of this room by about that deep.
50 feet long.
So
At least.
It's a good point.
it's a lot of space.
What's the elevation change?
Well, about 7 feet.
Yeah.
So 84 feet of ramp?
84 feet of ramp.
Well, I do want to say that I was concerned about it a couple of meetings ago, when you had the adults upstairs, because in case of a fire, in case of, needing to get out of the building without, using the elevator, children could be brought downstairs, but the staff cannot help, disabled people that are upstairs get down. So I think now that the adults are downstairs, that makes a big, big difference to that. That made me feel a lot better about it.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I actually remember the previous one was a little confused until the comment just now. Did the two sides flip? We went from.
A couple of times.
What was the rationale for putting the children back upstairs?
The biggest thing for children up is that if children are going to flow outside, if they're having a program, they want to take advantage of a story outdoors, for example. When they're downstairs, the natural place for them to go would be up here in the front. There was some concern about being so close to the traffic there, and there's some folks worried that the traffic is pretty fast on Chestnut Street, so we thought it would be better if we could have a spot for the kids at the rear of the building, which is really what this is. It's also a nice spot where the meeting room, we're having a meeting like this, for example, and if there's an intermission in the cookies and the coffee that we're not getting, were being made, we could go out into that space.
Next meeting.
Next meeting, next.
Mike, you bring those?
You could, so the meeting could flow out in that space, but the kids could also get out to that space and they wouldn't be out near the road. That was, I think, one of the bigger factors. It was a variety of things, but because it almost works either way. But that's where we ended up for a variety of reasons. That's the one that comes to mind for me in terms of safety for the children, yeah.
Is this the sort of thing that we would hash out, like, let's say we as a town decide to go forward?
It's your building, yes.
That we would
Yep.
kind of, we could sort this sort of thing out in
And-
like a
So
common period?
all decisions are made by those gentlemen up there.
Okay.
They are the building committee, they were hired by you to do these type of things.
But like, we're not saying,
No one
like,
hired us.
we're deciding. Like, that's
You volunteered!
Yeah, okay.
Don't ever volunteer! So, but, you have a really good building committee out there. They're in the middle of building you a school. They're, this is one of the first jobs where we didn't have to educate the building committee. They would talk the language and they got it and ran.
And when we talk to them, we end up bringing up things that we hear from the public as well. That slide I showed you with the view from the central park, looking up at the site, that picture got sent to us in an email. It's a great photograph. We had one where it leaves and you can't see. That picture's terrific. And so we put it in the slideshow because it really tells the story. We didn't have a picture that does that. And we had that conversation based on some feedback we got from the public, and that's what they came. So it's always part of what we do. We don't want to design a building that we love, and we want to design a building that you love. We don't really have a signature style. You don't drive by one of our buildings and say, oh, there's a Johnson Roberts building, because they do this. Although Dan does tell me, you do this. I didn't really notice, but we want to really design a building that works for you all.
I encourage you to look at his website. They're all different. You know, from Greenfield, which is a modern building, to Irving, which is a wonderful rural library.
Thank you.
So, but they're both went through this exact same process, programming, public meetings. I don't like it, I like this, I don't like that. And we somehow, as a community, find that melding point where we get the majority to really rally behind it. And I think we'll get there here too. Of course, money's always a big issue, and we'll be having those discussions at a later date.
A little closer to here, we did Littleton, Boxborough just a while ago. We did Charlton. Trying to think of things that are close to you. I haven't done anything like in any of your immediate surrounding communities, but maybe some of those come to mind. But those are, Littleton's the most recent. If anybody has an opportunity, it's close to 495.
Couple more before we get to 8 o'clock, couple more
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah.
I'd like to ask about the study rooms. First of all, what kind of space is there? Is there a table, one chair, table, two chairs, a table, a chair on each side? What
Yes.
does the study room?
All those things. We have a variety of sizes of study rooms. I think the original program called for 4 rooms, all the same size. One of the things that we need to do is to make recommendations on right-sizing your program. Part of the feedback we had is that in the same amount of square footage, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms of different sizes in different configurations for larger groups of people. Rather than 4 rooms that hold 4 people, we've got a larger room that you could do 6 or 8 people in. We've got some smaller rooms that you could do 2 in, because we know sometimes people want to come in and want to do 2 in, something like that. It's really just a one-on-one or small group, so that there's more flexibility. So this one is small, the computer study room is a little smaller, close to the desk and the computers in case you need help. A little bit larger here and kind of a medium-sized room. It's pretty much whatever you need. We're trying to make sure that there's a little something for everybody.
So what does that mean, study room? How quiet is it?
Well, it'll have doors on it, but there'll be glass. We're trying to make sure that folks can see into it to kind of keep an eye on things. So it'll be quieter than the rest of the library, and the rest of the library isn't too loud anyway. But you know, gone are the days where people said shush. You don't shush in the library, right?
I don't, I can sure use it.
So it'll be pretty quiet in there. The idea is when you shut the door and you can kind of focus, but it won't be absolutely silent.
So it's not a place where a student with clarinet can go in and practice?
No. That's the first time somebody's asked me that. We have done some sound isolation in some rooms where people want to be able to get in and do recording. Occasionally, it's a special request that we've had a couple of times. We've done something like that. We don't often run into that, but no, those rooms are not envisioned to be designed like that. That'd be hard. I mean, we used to do them in schools all the time, you know, in band practice and in individual practice rooms. You can do a pretty good job, but if somebody gets in there with a clarinet, you're going to hear it, even in a sound isolated room.
And we had one more question, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're saying that we still have ultimate flexibility to have input, but it looks like you've gone far enough down the path that you've made a decision that the 3 level is that's what the answer is?
That's what we're looking at right now, yes, yeah. And that's really driven by the site that you have out there, the natural grade. In order to make the other options work, we either have to flatten the site and build really high retaining walls around the back, or the site just won't meet the handicap accessibility code.
Well, what you were showing before was the 1 level, people walked in near the street.
Yeah.
Ground level, and the 2nd level, people walked in at ground level.
That's right.
In the back.
Yep, that was our initial idea until we talked to our, yes.
I thought that was a nice way to handle handicap access.
That
Both levels and ground level.
And that was based on, that was before we actually had the instrument survey.
Once we got the survey, we sent it to our.
A little bit different than what we thought.
Yes, we were basing it on the kind of GPS data. And once we got the survey, we found out it didn't really work. So we got the civil engineer involved, and they told us that we can't keep the slopes on the parking lot or the sidewalks on the site low enough if we get all the way up a full story by the time we get to the back. It just gets too steep. All that parking along the side of the building there, all this parking along this, if that gets too steep, when you open up your door, it'll just crash into the person next to you. Number one, this gets really steep, and then that walkway that runs along there gets really steep. And we can't do it. It won't be, it'll be slippery in the winter, but it'll be too steep to comply with the access code. It becomes problematic. So there's only so far we can come up before it gets too steep. And if we pull this up so it aligns with the upper floor, we're too far up here, and because there's only so much room we have between here and here.
Well, that works for me, because I'm one of the people that needs to have evening meetings.
Thank you for all your wonderful questions.
Yeah, this is great.
It's really helpful for us.
Communities that really get involved end up with, I think, buildings that they're happy with.
And Marie, you post our meetings where? On our
So
website?
all the meetings, the recordings are posted on our website, and as soon as I get them, they get posted. And there's also, if you want to be on a mailing list, Gloria has a piece of paper, you can get on a mailing list, or you can go to our website, bigelowlibrary.org, and just sign up.
And we certainly advertise our meetings and we post them in the town hall as well. And they're on the town website, right?
Yeah,
on the town
everything
website.
is posted, you just have to remember to look. But if you want, don't want to have the posted, tell me, I can put you on the list.
Oh, you can see it.
Thank you all for coming and your great feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
That was